A third day of protests is taking place in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. People are demonstrating against President Volodymyr Zelenskyy sacking popular Defense Minister Mykhailo Fedorov in a reshuffle on Thursday. It's reported that Fedorov clashed with the army's top commander. However, he gained wide support from Ukrainians for his policies, which included a focus on drone production and increasing military salaries. All right, let's go to Kyiv, and our correspondent Nick Connolly is standing by for us. He's actually at a protest in support of the dismissed Defense Minister Mykhailo Fedorov. Nick, great to see you there. Why has Mykhailo Fedorov's dismissal triggered such a strong public reaction?
I think, Pablo, it's about the fact that there was a sense that Ukraine was finally turning a corner, that this was a minister who had a vision of how Ukraine could win, or at least get to a peace that would satisfy Ukrainians. And now, after only 6 months of job, we managed to a lot, starting from switching off Starlink for Russia here in Ukraine, which made a huge difference in terms of Russian drones reaching their targets. He's now been pushed out for reasons that have nothing to do with his competence. You can see quite how many people are behind me, and we're still an hour off the official beginning. It is very loud, and I think there's a real sense of kind of surprise here amongst the people. I think there was a fear that maybe after his ousting, people would just let it kind of pass and things would fizzle out, but that certainly hasn't happened. People are coming out. There was a large turnout yesterday, and the expectation is they'll be the same tonight.
Tell us, what are protesters telling you about their concerns regarding President Zelenskyy's decision?
So one of the things you hear most often is that Ukraine, as a small Soviet army, an unreformed army, can't beat Russia as a big, unreformed Soviet-style army, so that the only way out is kind of innovation. Let's try and talk to some people here. We're going to go and try and go through the crowd for you, see if we can find some of the people who said that they would be willing to talk to us in English and explain why it is they've turned out. It is very full here, so we are not guaranteed to find everyone. There's a poster here saying, "My dad is at the front line and I'm here and I'm angry for him." We're going to talk to a woman here who came. Can you tell us why you come here for this demonstration?
Yes, I've come here to support our Minister of Defense, Federov, because I think he gave us hope. He gave us innovations, he gave us technology, he gave us the hope that we needed to win. And right now, since they want to put another person on the post of our Minister of Defense, that person is most likely going to have principles that we no longer stand for, principles that were used in the USSR and way back 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and we don't want that. We want hope for the future, and so we came to support him. He is our Minister of Defense.
Do you think there's a chance to get Fedorov back? Do you think Zelenskyy will agree to that?
I think that if enough people come, yes, there is a chance. We can show him that we care, truly.
Thank you very much for your time. So let's go through the crowd and give you a sense of the posters here. If you just look at the posters, there are lots of handwritten posters that people want to show that these are not organized protests, that they have come up with these ideas themselves. People drawing posters on bits of cardboard. This is not a political or party political kind of gathering. But if you go through here, you see lots of people with Syrski's picture. They all want him out. That's the kind of chant you hear, Syrski out. Let's try and go through.
Nick, it was interesting there to hear that protester say that they have a hope. They have a hope that maybe President Zelenskyy will go back on his decision. So, I mean, is that what you're hearing from people there? That they're hoping that there will be a shift?
I mean, definitely there is the hope that if there's enough public outrage, people come out for long enough, that he will change his mind. I think if you talk to political analysts, they are a lot more skeptical that Zelenskyy will be willing to kind of show that kind of weakness and retract that decision. I think the kind of maybe more realistic expectation is that this public pressure could actually see Syrski ousted out of his job, and then a restart maybe with new faces, but people with the same kind of ethos that Fedorov had brought to the job. That is the hope. But it's getting bigger because there's been a lot of attempts now to put pressure on soldiers who've come out of these protests from Syrski and the military top command, trying to basically punish people who speak out, and that seems to be having the opposite effect. It's making people angrier and making them come out in bigger numbers. I think it's important to really stress how important and unusual these protests are. This is only the second big protest since the war began, and this is a country where basically internal differences have been put aside. in favour of winning this war. So for people to come out, that is a big deal. And lots of people were not willing to do it unless they really felt that they had no other option.
Yeah, you've mentioned there, Syrski, you're referring to the Army Chief Oleksandr Syrski. Can you just give us a sense of how deep the rift was between Fedorov and the Army Chief, Oleksandr Syrski?
Well, we heard even from President Zelenskyy that they wouldn't speak unless Zelenskyy was at the table. They were basically ignoring each other. We've heard from Fedorov since his sacking that everything he tried to do and change was being blocked by General Syrski. We have now had obviously briefings from the Syrski camp saying that, for instance, Fedorov wasn't providing enough resources to artillery and things that he thought weren't high-tech enough, and that, Syrski and his team think are crucial to winning this war. But certainly there's a sense that this is also a generational conflict between people who, grew up in the Soviet Union or in the 90s and, Mykhailo Fedorov, who is the youngest minister in Ukraine's history. People are getting on their knees now. I don't quite know what it is was going on. I think it's probably a moment of silence. Let's have a look.
If you're just joining us, we're seeing images there live from Kyiv, where our correspondent Nick Connolly is at a protest in support of the dismissed Defense Minister Mykhailo Fedorov. Nick has been speaking to people there attending the protest, and they've expressed their hope that the dismissal of Mykhailo Fedorov will be reversed, but in the meantime, a new defence minister has been named, and we'll go back to Nick in a moment once he feels it's all right to speak again, because obviously being there we go. Okay, Nick, we're back to you. You probably were hearing me there, so yeah. So as I was mentioning, there's a new man is taking over as defence minister. What do we know about him?
So he is someone who comes from special forces, someone who has a very storied military career. But there is a fear here amongst the people that, firstly, this is not someone who can organise military production on the scale that Ukraine needs to fight this war. And secondly, he's being used, that his reputation is being used, that he might be left as an acting minister with no real power and just as a kind of distraction from the system trying to reassert itself, and would basically be a kind of distraction from Syrski and his team having more influence.
All right, Nick, we're gonna leave it there, but really great to get that update from you there in Kyiv. DW's correspondent in the Ukrainian capital, Nick Connolly. Thanks so much.